Coming to you live once again from the wastelands of the internet. I have come to bring you the news of the week, news of little import, news of large import, news that makes no sense to anything. How is it going, everybody? Is I the Nomad? I see that you're in the chat there, Mr. Barkley. Welcome, welcome. As far as the radar cards go, they're perfectly acceptable. Right? I'll be honest. I also have a preference for Nvidia. Um, but since I've worked with the Nvidia cards for a long time, I can tell you their drivers they go through phases where they're really good and there's no problems, and then they'll put out a set of drivers that are okay, and then a set of drivers that flat out suck. Um, it, it's quite a mixed bag with them, and since their chips were being used for the AI generations that everyone's been talking about, and they came out with a new AI generation for the chips, there's a whole slew of things that go along with that. But I am back. I had a wonderful trip to Atlanta. Wonderful as in it sucked. But I am back. And then this morning I had several things going on, including some people that were dropping off some new furniture. All right, that I had to take care of this morning. All right, so I was a little bit late today. A little bit late for the things. But there's news. There's news. Let's get to it, shall we? Ukraine confirms withdrawal from Russia's Sudzha. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces confirmed Saturday that the Ukrainian forces have withdrawn from Sudzha, a key town in Russia's western Kursk region. According to a map published by the General Staff on Facebook, the Ukrainian army has repositioned closer to the Ukrainian-Russian border, all right, in the Kursk region. In the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian forces endured 19 Russian airstrikes, engaged in 20 combat clashes in the Kursk direction, the General Staff said in a statement. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Thursday that the Russian military operation to retake the Kursk region has entered its final stage. The Russian defense minister said on the same day that the Russian forces had liberated the settlements of Melovony, Melovio, all right, Podol, and Sudza during their offensive operations. Sudza has been under Ukrainian control since August of 2024, when Ukraine launched a surprise cross-border operation in the region. Okay. All right. First of all, I think I'd rather go to a Ukrainian city than most of ours at this point. Okay, let's talk about this for a moment. Sudhu or Sudza was the last major, and they say major city. It's not really a city. It was a town. All right, from the way we look at things, it was a town of about 5,000 people. Okay. Now, in America, that's a small town, obviously. Right, it's a small town America. But it was the last one that the Ukrainians held. And this all began when we slapped the Ukrainian president Volodymyr Zelensky with, you want to see what goes on? And we refused to allow them to have intelligence. This was the only thing that keeps Ukraine alive. People forget this. They think that all we do is, Americans, it's all about the equipment. As Americans, it's all about, no. We've been handing them massive reams of intelligence explaining where the Russian forces are when they move, where they're moving to, where they have moved to, etc. What is weak, what isn't weak. So this idea that the United States, all right, that the Ukrainians are tough people, they can fight it on their own and everything, they just need help. What help do they need from America? Everything. In order to win this war the way that the Ukrainians want to win this war, the only way that they could do it is with everything from America. And I'm not joking. You're going to need American money, American equipment, American food. You're going to need American intelligence, and finally, you're going to need American troops. Anybody who thinks otherwise is just kidding themselves. If we had withdrawn all our support from them, Ukraine collapses. Now, I just recently saw a a post where they claim that the Ukrainians have 800,000 men in their military. Then it would be a risk of nukes flying. Yeah, if we did put troops in there, right? But they're claiming that the Ukrainians have 800,000 men, and that the Russian forces facing them are like 1.1 or 1.2 million. Bullshit. I'm gonna flat out tell you that's bullshit. They do not have that many men in arms. They don't. They've got a lot. Don't get me wrong. I would estimate they'd probably have probably around 500,000, but it isn't 800,000. It isn't close to a million. If it was close to a million, then they can stand toe to toe with the Russians. Maybe they had that many at the start. They didn't even have that many at the start. But this was just an example. This was one of the things that Trump did was Trump stood up there and said, "Look, Zelensky, you're going to have to come to the dinner." Zelensky decided to spit on us because he was listening to the Europeans and, of course, listening to the anti-American Americans. All right, because who had an entire different agenda, which was to try and make it look like Trump's the bad guy here. All right, it was all on the American politicians' idea was let's make Trump look bad. And when Zelensky followed their orders, the result wasn't what they expected because Trump didn't look bad because the guy spit on America. The guy spit on everything we've been doing for his country. His country doesn't exist without us. That was just one small example of how fast this Ukrainian war would have been won by the Russians if the United States hadn't have intervened and started immediately giving them the intelligence that they needed to prevent these kind of offensive operations by the Russians. And they've been very successful. And of course, Putin is pushing to remove this card off the table from negotiations, meaning the Ukrainians would still have a card to play if they still held Russian territory. Well, Trump, they're our ally. He hasn't been an ally. He's not even a vassal worth a damn. And I'm talking about Zelensky. Oh, Putin's so evil. Putin's so this. Okay, yeah, great, wonderful. No one doubts that. But if he's an evil, a dictator, and a maniacal lunatic, as you all claim that he is, why aren't the Europeans standing up? Where are the great Luftwaffe? Why don't we see the French Foreign Legion? Where are they all in this war? Where are they in this support? Where's the Italians? Where are they? Why aren't they marching around? Where's the big Italian supply line going through there? Maybe those pesky Dutch could sit up there and figure out a way to send more than just an old Patriot battery that was being replaced by the Americans anyway, huh? Maybe something like that can happen. Maybe I'm sure some random Dutch somewhere will say we have to go to war because they run the country. Oh, my wife is as upset about that as you obviously are, Matt. The thing is everybody knew that this was going to happen as far as that goes. We'll get to that stuff later. The thing that bothers me about this is everyone talks about how the Americans are not the ally. Oh, okay, well, let's talk about another one. Oh, the British. Oh, yes. Keir Starmer reveals military plans for Ukraine peacekeeping deal as he says Vladimir Putin will have to come to the table sooner or later. Keir Starmer says Vladimir Putin will have to negotiate on Ukraine sooner or later as the Prime Minister begins fresh talks with coalition partners, with military chiefs set to meet this week to discuss operational plans for a peacekeeping force. Speaking after a video call with 25 world leaders, the Prime Minister said that the Russian despot would need to come to the table, adding, "This is the moment. Let the guns fall silence and agree to the ceasefire now." He outlined the importance of Britain's interest in the ceasefire, all right? Recapping how an invasion of the Ukraine had pushed up the cost of living and energy prices. But the Prime Minister, who stood at the lectern labeled with the slogan "Securing Our Future," failed to answer questions today on whether he has a plan B on what happens if Putin fails to come to the table. Now, I will say this. So does Trump. Okay? Trump has now put the screws to Zelensky, right? Um, and Zelensky is threatening to hit Moscow with missiles, right? Which is a joke, and I mean that. Okay, not that he couldn't do it. Don't misunderstand me. Okay, but just hitting the country's capital isn't going to fix anything. In fact, it would probably make it worse for a peace deal in the sense that the Russian people, if you think this is going to break the Russian people's will, you're sorely mistaken. The bombing campaigns in World War II, okay, on civilian populations and so forth, and people have to understand this. The bombing on civilians was not what people think that it was per se. Okay, the neither side, although the Germans were less precise about this until they started using the rocket campaigns. Once they got into the rocket campaigns, it was totally fire the missile, fire the rocket, and then wherever it lands, it lands. Okay, wherever it lands, it lands. The bombing campaigns were meant to hit the civilian infrastructure, all right, to make the ability to produce the war materials necessary to continue the fight incapable of happening. We were trying to bomb factories, ball bearing plants, things that had any kind of military possible use. And did that include military or civilian use projects as well? Yeah, there was a lot of things that were dual use, of course. But it wasn't just the Germans that were bombing those areas. We were bombing them. The British were bombing them. I mean, it was a standard tactic. But it never broke the people's will to fight, to carry on. And in Britain, it hardened their will. Do not think that that's going to have on any kind of an effect to fix the problems that are going on. Europe is screwed. You can't show a vicious contempt for your own people and try to replace them, and then expect them to go to war for you. That's it. That's very true. That's very true. But Kier, dude, the the only ceasefire plan that's going to be acceptable is some kind of buffer zone monitored by troops. Okay, they can't be monitored by Ukrainian troops, and they're not going to be monitored by Russian troops. So that leaves someone else. Who's that someone else going to be? You gonna tell me you're gonna put the Italian military there? Maybe the powerful German Wehrmacht will step up and put 50, 60, 70,000 troops in the area. Huh? French Foreign Legion? French are going to put their troops in there? Where are the troops going to come from? Sweden? You going to sit up there and step up? Maybe Finland? Finland won't do it. Now, why won't Finland do it? Because they need their troops. Quite frankly, they need their troops on the Russian border to prevent the Russians from invading them. The Russians have tried to take Finland several times. If you don't think that they're willing to do it again, all right, I don't think the Finnish are that stupid. And I don't blame them. Poland, same thing. They're not going to move troops in there when they need them for the defense of their own homeland. So where are they going to get the troops from? Denmark? Maybe Belgium? You going to put some troops in there? How many troops are you going to put in there? Here's another one for Starmer. Starmer urging Putin to prove that he's serious about peace by signing the Ukrainian ceasefire. Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Saturday urged Russian President Vladimir Putin, all right, to sign up to a ceasefire in its war against Ukraine. If he is serious about peace, and said his allies will keep increasing the pressure on the Kremlin, including by planning for a peacekeeping force to an operational phase. Oh, so you think that you're going to put troops on the ground, huh? During a 2-hour virtual meeting of what he had termed a coalition of the willing, Starmer said that the Kremlin's dithering and delay over Donald Trump's ceasefire proposal and Russia's continued barbaric attacks on Ukraine run entirely counter to Putin's stated desire for peace. We agreed that now the ball is in the Russian court and the President Putin must prove he is... Notice now you're calling him President Putin instead of despot, right? President Putin must prove that he is serious about peace and sign up to a ceasefire on equal terms. Around 30 leaders were involved in the call, including European partners such as President Emmanuel Macron, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, all right, and President Vladimir Zelensky, and leaders from Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, as well as officials from NATO and European Union's executive. Really? So the Aussies are going to put in troops, huh? The Kiwis? Oh, the Canadians? The great Canadian military is going to step up and put in troops? What, you going to open a brigade there? No. You'd be lucky if you got a battalion from each one of these countries. If you got a battalion from New Zealand, Australia, and from Canada, that's 3,000 individuals. 3. When you need to plus up to about 100,000 at least. You're going to need at least 100,000 people on that border to secure it. 100,000. Tell me how many are coming from the Wehrmacht. Tell me how many are going to be coming from the French. I'm sure Putin is very worried. He's shaking in his boots. Maybe they'll get him from somewhere we don't expect. Oh, like Hungary. Yeah, listen to this one. Orban vows to defend Hungary's sovereignty. Once again, somebody who has no intention of giving troops because he's got to worry about his own country against EU control. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has vowed to defend Hungary's sovereignty and resist external control, describing the EU as an empire seeking domination like past foreign powers. Ding, 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 ding. Speaking to supporters in Budapest on Hungary's national holiday, Orban criticized Brussels for overstepping its authority, comparing it to the historical rulers of Hungary. There is always an empire that covets the freedom of Hungarians. Right now, it is Brussels, he said. He seems to be one of the few leaders that isn't insane. Orban rejected the idea of leaving the EU, instead advocating for internal reform. We must take it and change it. Highlighting Hungary's economic independence, Orban pointed to the country's patriotic national economy with efforts to regain control over its energy sector, regulate multinational corporations and banks, and resist financial dependency on external institutions. Now, Orban is Orban is a demagogue. But he's not wrong. He's not wrong. These people are disgraceful, folks. They're disgraceful. If you're really worried, if the Europeans are really concerned with Russia, and they really want to turn up the screws to get peace, they have to be willing to get off the Russian tit. They have to be willing to get to take other people's oil rather than Russian oil and Russian gas. They're going to have to change how they do things, especially Germany. And none of them are willing to do it. Just like none of them are willing to plus up their military. They said that. Don't you understand, Nomad? They said that they're going to increase. They said it's going to increase. Oh, really? Does anybody see a draft? He's wrong about the EU. They need to leave rather than try to fix it. Um, that's a them problem. Let them freaking solve it out. I don't see that in France declaring a draft. I don't see Germany declaring a draft. I don't see Britain declaring a draft. The three biggest countries. I don't see Italy declaring a draft. I don't see these countries, population wise, that would be necessary in order for them to plus up their military. You would have to declare for a draft. To say that you're going to add money to it, that you're going to spend on it, how are you going to increase the size of your military if you don't start drafting people? At least quickly. It's the only way to quickly add manpower is the draft. Ask Zelensky. It was the only way he could hope to survive. So the Europeans would have to actually try to put pressure on Russia, and I just don't see it. I just don't see it happen. I just don't. Let's go further around the world. Cuba is still largely without power after a nationwide grid collapse. In a season where they should not have any problems whatsoever, all right, because this is actually, from a power perspective, one of their least intensive seasons, their entire grid collapsed. Cuba has remained largely without power on Saturday morning after the island's grid collapsed the night before, knocking out electricity for 10 million people and raising fresh questions about the viability of its antiquated generating system. At sunrise, uh, the island's grid operator UNE said it was generating only a trickle of electricity, around 225 megawatts, or less than 10% of the total demand, enough to cover some vital services like hospital, water supply, and food production centers. Officials said that they begun the process of firing up the country's decade-old generation plants, but gave no timeline for restoring service. Cuba's grid failed Friday evening around 8:15 p.m. after an aging component of a transmission line at a substation in Havana shorted, beginning a chain reaction that completely shut down power generation across the island. The grid collapse follows a string of nationwide blackouts late last year that plunged Cuba's frail power generation system into near total disarray, stressed by fuel shortages, natural disasters, and economic crises. How about by communism? Most Cubans outside the capital of Havana have already been living for months with rolling blackouts that peaked at 20 hours a day in recent weeks. Havana was still largely without power on Saturday morning. Light traffic navigated intersections with no functioning stoplights, and cellular internet was weak or non existent in some areas. Abel Bonet, all right, chatted with his friends on Havana's Malecon waterfront boulevard early Saturday, taking in the fresh sea breeze after a stuffy night without power. Right now, no one knows when power will be back on, he said. This is the first time this has happened this year, but last year it happened 3 times. Severe shortages of food, medicine, and water have made life increasingly unbearable for many Cubans, and people have been fleeing the island in recent years in record breaking numbers. This is what most Western readers aspire to. It is, unfortunately. Ah. go to the Philippines. Duarte's swift descent from Punisher president to inmate. As former Philippine leader Rodrigo Duarte rallied supporters in Hong Kong on Sunday. What the hell was he doing in Hong Kong? Hiding, probably. His team seemed unconcerned about rumors that the International Criminal Court may soon issue an arrest warrant against him. Despite a bitter political feud with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Duarte's team believed any legal action would first take place in the Philippines, said Harry Roque, Duarte's former spokesman, in a phone interview from The Hague. It was a fatal mistake. In the span of 2 days, Duarte went from that Hong Kong rally to sitting glumly on a private jet, delivering him to prosecutors at The Hague, where he faces accusations of being responsible for the extrajudicial killing of thousands of people from 2011 through 2019. Duarte's Dutch jail provides spiritual advisors and volleyball. He didn't expect the government to humiliate him. His lawyer, Raul Labino, all right, a member of Duarte's political party and legal team, he's always maintained that if he'll be imprisoned or killed, it'll happen in his country. Duarte made his first appearance before the court on Friday after confirming his identity, age, and place of birth via a video link. Judge Julia Motok, I'm just going to use the last name because I cannot in the attempt to screw up that other one. All right, set the next hearing, which will deal with whether the case will go to full trial on September 23rd. So he's going to stay in jail while they review the case to go whether to go to full trial on September 23rd. It is March. That's over 6 months away. You're going to leave him in prison for 6 friggin' months while you decide whether or not to hold a trial? Really? I'm going to be following this case. I am going to be following this case. He'll get really good at volleyball. Controversial Japanese politician Tachibana, all right, was slashed in central Tokyo. Boy, doesn't it seem like there's just all sorts of wonderful things happening in the world today? The leader of a Japanese political group, Takahashi Tachibana, was slashed and attacked by a man on Friday while in Tokyo's government district for a stump speech, although his injuries were not life-threatening. Police arrested a 30-year-old Shion Miyanashi. All right, I'm not trying to butcher the name, I just can't pronounce it. At the scene on suspicion of attempted murder. Tachibana, the 57-year-old head of the NHK party, all right, that campaigned against Japan's public broadcaster and known as a controversial figure with strong ties or strong social media following. Miyanashi from western Tokyo has told the police that he intended to kill him with a sharp weapon. The suspect aimed near Tachibana's head, causing bleeding, including from his ear, according to police. The incident took place around 5:10 p.m. in front of the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry. Miyanashi was winding up to take a photo with Tachibana and attack the politician when his turn came. The weapon was with a 16-centimeter blade was found at the scene. Getting up close and personal. And then, of course, what does Tachibana do? Puts a freaking bandage on his head, says, I won't stop. Takes a line from Trump. Fight, fight, fight. It's a good way to make sure that the guy's going to get elected. It's going to increase his base of support. Oh, the craziness continues. Meanwhile, back in evil Trump-danistan, used to be called America, Trump-landistan. Trump set to ban people from 43 countries from traveling to the U.S., including, oh, what a surprise, Russia and Belarus, with nations warned that they will stay on the ban list if the governments do not address deficiencies within 60 days. Uh-oh. Banistan. Trump is set to ban people from 43 countries from traveling to the U.S., with visas from Russia being sharply restricted. A dramatic memo, excuse me, the dramatic memo also seeks key allies of Moscow placed under heavy sanctions, as Belarusian travelers could see their dreams of traveling stateside slashed, the New York Times reports. The explosive immigration proposals came as the U.S. president is wrestling with Putin and Zelensky over a ceasefire in the Ukraine, warning last night that World War III could very easily erupt if peace talks failed. Alongside the warring state was a vast swath of nations across the globe have been told their governments have 60 days to address deficiency or they will remain on the list. The memo shows countries divided into 3 separate groups, including full visa suspensions and partial suspensions. Many are from the Middle East. They should all be from the Middle East. I mean, all the Middle East should be over. And Africa, with Afghanistan, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, among the 11 who faced the most drastic sanctions. Duh. Well, let's see what the justices have to say first. Meanwhile, from Politico, Trump calls his opponents scum and lawbreakers in a bellicose speech at the Justice Department. Because they were. Okay? On both counts. President Trump on Friday walked into the Department of Justice and labeled his courtroom opponents scum, judges corrupt, they were, and prosecutors who investigated him deranged. Ding, 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 ding. All 3 counts are accurate. All 3 counts are accurate. With the DOJ logo directly behind him, Trump called his political opponents lawbreakers. They did break the law and said others should be sent to prison. Yeah, for breaking the law, they should be sent to prison. These are people that are bad people, really bad people, the president said in a rambling speech that lasted more than an hour. While condemning officials who directed the military's withdrawal from Afghanistan and repeating his false claims about the 2020 election being stolen, Trump said, people who did this to us should go to jail. In remarks that were by turns dark, exultant, and pugnacious, Trump vowed to remake the Justice Department and retaliate against his enemies, some of whom he called thugs, because they acted like thugs. They were. They were out of control. They broke law after law about what they were doing. And see, Politico here, oh, no, they were just political opponents. You're a liar, sir. When you falsify evidence to a court, you've broken the law. Did they do that? Yes, they did. Did they knowingly do that? Yes, they did. Did they continue it anyway? And you stand there with something like Politico go, well, they're just political opponents. No, they're not. They're lawbreakers. And they have politicized the Justice Department. And they've got to go in there with a broom and sweep a lot of this corruption out. Good luck to them. They have to start going to prison or they'll keep doing it. Exactly. This is the result. After Columbia arrests, international college students fall silent. No shit. Maybe they'll stop spitting on this country, huh? Maybe foreigners in this country, all right, who are here on quote unquote student visas, need to keep their mouths shut and stop spitting on this country. Or they can go back to their own countries to get their education. In a span of a week, a hush has descended on higher education in the United States. International students and faculty have watched the growing crackdown on pro-Palestinian protesters at Columbia University. And there's going to be more arrests. Some of Americans who were hiding these bastards, all right, because they are on a terror watch list with apprehension. Some say they are familiar with government crackdowns but never expected them on an American college campuses. The elite New York City University has been the focus of the Trump administration's effort to deport foreigners who took part in pro-Palestinian demonstrations at colleges last year. It wasn't because they were doing it last year. Once again, Jocelyn Decker is a liar. These people were handing out pro-Hamas literature and everything else. Federal immigration agents have arrested two foreigners, one of them a student who protested last year at Columbia. They have revoked the visa of another student who fled the U.S. this week. The Department of Homeland Security agents also searched online campuses for two Columbia students on Thursday, but then did not make any arrests there. GOP officials have warned it's just the beginning, saying more student visas are expected to be revoked in the coming days. Columbia's graduate school of journalism, what a surprise, where these fostering pieces of phlegm, all right, exist. Where these festering pieces of pus come from. The wonderful Columbia School of Journalism. Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism issued a statement reporting an alarming chill among its foreign students this past week. No shit. Maybe you shouldn't have been saying, hey, spitting on America's cool, burn an American flag, we'll help you burn it. Personally, Columbia University and New York City as a whole can go F themselves because they are at the root of the corruption here. Them in D.C. Let's be perfectly frank. New York City and D.C. are hubs of corruption in ways no one has ever seen. I hope they pay extra tuition at least. Delete is one of their favorite terms inside Doge's IRS takeover ahead of tax season. The chaos at the Internal Revenue Service began almost immediately after the first envoy from the Department of Government Efficiency arrived last month at the agency's Washington, D.C. headquarters. Within minutes of showing up, 20-something software engineer dispatched from Doge began demanding access to the tax collection agency's most protected and internal databases. First, the IT system, and then one containing the personal and financial data for millions of American taxpayers and other systems housing IRS contracts. Another Doge staffer sought to shut down nearly all of the IRS's congressionally funded programs and initiatives planned for this fiscal year, aimed at modernizing the agency and improving the tax filing process. As Doge has set up shop inside of the IRS over the past month, the agency has fired thousands of workers and auditors and set out to shutter more than 110 taxpayer assistance offices across the country. Widespread layoffs are in the works, with plans to cut the force by nearly 20% of all IRS agents by May 15th. The barnstorming, which has played out at multiple agencies, has thrown the IRS into turmoil at the height of tax season. Gee, I wonder why that could be. Maybe because these people aren't doing their jobs and have been activists, where they've been handing out goodies to all their friends. And before people go, well, what do you mean by that, no matter? Let's talk about the 40, what is it? What do they call that? 501c, I believe it was the 501c filings for groups that are obviously politically aligned to the DNC, but in the meantime rejecting 501c applications from almost every freaking tax group, like, you know, back in the day, the Tea Party stuff. And they were doing it intentionally because how dare they sit up there and apply for the same tax admissions? These people were being run like activists, and they were doing a whole lot of a hanky illegal shit. What's more is, it's going to be real funny when people find out just who they were sicked on to go do audits on people who had no business being audited. Unless you're being fired, I can't see anyone crying about the Internal Revenue Service being let go. There's a push to do this at this agency because Trump has this vision. Whether he's going to be able to get it through or not is we'll have to wait and see, because I wouldn't hold my breath. But he wants to end the IRS. He wants to totally revamp the tax code. It will be interesting to see if he can do it. I personally doubt it. Unfortunately, I truly do. Apple's Siri chief calls AI delays ugly and embarrassing and promises fixes. Yeah, dude, you don't understand the people that you've got working for you. Apparently, you have yet to come to terms with the fact they're a bunch of leftist activists. Apple's top executive overseeing its Siri virtual assistant told staff that delays to key features have been ugly and embarrassing. And really, the ones like show me fraud and Trump's name appears first in a flash and then things like that. You're gonna tell me that those are embarrassing? And a decision to publicly promote the technology before it was ready made matters worse. No, no, no. Publicly reporting the thing, it would have been ready if you hadn't hired a bunch of freaking lunatics. If you hadn't hired people who believe in activism more than doing their job. You've been warned, Apple. You've been warned for decades. This isn't new. Who these people are, the fact that they're activists, it's not new. I'm guessing NVIDIA's problems are for similar reasons. NVIDIA's problems are well, NVIDIA thought it was the big dog on the walk in its chip manufacturing, and don't get me wrong, that's still an aspect of this. But they took a big bloodied eye when China ditched them. All right, and the Chinese did it. Let's be perfectly frank. The Chinese claims about their AI being superior to NVIDIA stuff, it's all a bunch of bunk. But at the time, people panicked, and shares of NVIDIA cratered as a result. All right, and of course, the Chinese that did it, knowing that it was bunk, they made money because they shorted the stock. They made they made billions. Robbie Walker, who serves as the senior director at Apple, delivered the stark comments during a all-hands meeting for the Siri division, saying that the team was facing a bad period. Walker also said that it's unclear when the enhancements will actually launch, according to people with knowledge on the matter, who asked not to be identified because the gathering was private. The frank discussion shows the extent of Apple's crisis in the field of artificial intelligence, where it is struggling to catch up with its peers. Siri, less advanced than rival systems, has become a symbol of Apple's AI challenges. The company's woes boiled over last year when it acknowledged publicly that critical features would be delayed indefinitely. You hired a bunch of activists, and now you got the result. Don't worry, There's a bunch more that you can hire coming straight from the federal government. I'm already sick of AI. Uh, what people expect AI to do and what it's actually capable of doing are two different things. It'll never be what people, it'll never be what people want. It'll never have consciousness. It just won't. They make most of their money from the server parts. Yeah, that's very true. Senate approves the funding bill hours before a shutdown deadline. What a shame. Sending it to Trump for a signature. The Senate passed a Republican-led spending bill Friday, hours before a government shutdown, overcoming sharp Democratic opposition to the measure and sending it to President Donald Trump to be signed into law. The essentially party line vote, 54 to 46, didn't give the full picture of the gnawing double Democrat angst over how to confront the Trump administration as its Department of Government Efficiency fires federal workers and dismantles operations. Democrats have argued over whether to fight, even risking a shutdown, and fumed that Republicans drafted a measure that included little of their input, short-changing health care, housing, and other priorities. What a crock of shit. That's what you always say. No matter what the Republicans do, it'll always be the same crap about healthcare is going to be affected. Social Security is going to be affected. But in the end, enough Democrat senators decided a government shutdown would be even worse and backed Democrat Senate leader Chucky Schumer's strategy to allow the bill to go forward, which they then proceeded to vote against. And there's a reason for that. The reason that Chucky, good old Chucky Schumer, all right, voted that way and decided to say, hey, wait a minute here, was the realization of two things. One, you can't scream about a government shutdown being a bad thing and horrific for everyone in the country and then do it, which they had been doing for the past 4 decades. Ever since people have been saying, we've got to put a stop to this spending, Chucky Schumer and the rest of his the clown party, with Nancy Pelosi, the queen bee of Congress, the queen of Congress, coming out, how dare you try to shut the government? All these people are going to be doing it. And the press mouthing their words, scaring people. Oh, they won't get their Social Security checks. Oh, they won't be able to get their services. Oh, it'll all be bad. Right? Well, Republicans and people like me have said, let it shut down. Leave it shut down for months. Let it sit there. Let it. Because the one thing people would begin to realize is, wow, the country's still going, people are still working, it's just a bunch of assholes who are working for the government that are out of jobs at the moment. They don't seem to be, but it doesn't seem to be helping the country any. The country doesn't seem to be worse off because of it. They can do the math. It's just money laundering. It is money laundering straight to themselves, and they know it. And that's why they've been bitching about what Doge has been doing. Not sure how I feel about this story. An embalmer at a Texas funeral firm used a scalpel to mutilate a sex offender's corpse, then stuffed the dead person's penis into his mouth, according to a court filing. The shocking incident occurred last month at Memorial Mortuary and Crematoria in Houston and resulted in the arrest of Amber Page Laudermilk, 34, for abuse of a corpse, a felony. Investigators have identified the dead man as Charles Roy Rodriguez, 58, a registered sex offender who lived in Brookside Village, a Houston suburb. Rodriguez was convicted of sexually assaulting a 31-year-old woman and was judged a moderate risk according to the Texas Offender Registry, which lists him as being required to remain on the registry for the entirety of his life. As detailed in a court filing within minutes of the funeral company's management team learning of Rodriguez's criminal history, a crematory employee told a coworker that she observed Laudermilk, seen above, cut off the descendant's penis halfway and stuff it in his mouth. Rodriguez is pictured below. Upon learning of the mutilation, the memorial mortuary and crematory manager went to the cremation room to look for themselves and noticed the genitals had been mutilated and the penis was in his mouth. The provisional embalmer told the cops that she witnessed Laudermilk stab the decedent. I'm not going to pronounce that right now. Rodriguez twice with a scalpel in the groin, and then cut off his penis and place it in his mouth, in the corpse's mouth. You didn't see anything, Laudermilk reportedly said to one worker who told police that she perceived the statement to be threatening. It seems pointless after he's dead. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, this woman is a bit, half deranged, but I'm not sure I would really throw the book at her. Okay, because you have to admit it's kind of understandable. Here's a stupid article. Have humans passed peak brain power? Data across countries and ages revealing a growing struggle to concentrate and declining verbal and numerical reasoning. Shocking! Shocking! I'm shocked! I'm shocked that we have a failing school system. What is intelligence? This may sound like a straightforward question with a straightforward answer. The Oxford English Dictionary defines it as a capacity to understand. But the definition itself raises an increasingly relevant question in a modern world. What happens if the extent to which we can practically apply that capacity is diminishing? Evidence is mounting that something exactly like that has been happening to human intellect over the past decade or so. Because cell phones are ubiquitous. Smartphones are ubiquitous now. People are getting dumber and dumber, and their attention spans are getting shorter and shorter because they keep looking at these freaking memory hole devices, walking around with them in their friggin' hands. It's not that people are actually getting stupider, except for the fact that if you're going to go, you remember back in the day when my generation was coming up, they were calling the television the boob tube. Why? Because this same type of thing was happening to people who spent all day looking on the television and becoming couch potatoes. Now they're thinking, it's because we're just not smart enough. Our brains just aren't expanding fast enough. No, it's because we're getting further and more reliant upon these stupid handheld devices. Kind of wish my brain had an expansion slot. Wait around a few years, they'll be putting one in. Angry Canadians get their elbows up in the face of Trump threats. Canadians are upset. At first, it was the threat, and then the reality of tariffs. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump talked with Canada forced annexation, no longer laughed off as a joke. It has really angered the population, better known for its politeness. Canadians are rallying for their country and seeing a resurgence in nationalism as Canada-U.S. relations top the list of issues preoccupying residents according to recent polls. Elbows up, a hockey term conveying a readiness to fight, is the new rallying cry, emblazoned on clothing, headlining rallies, and the title of a new podcast that dedicated its first episode to the practicalities of creating a civilian defense corps. It remains unclear how long Trump's tariffs will be in place or what is behind his aspirations for Canada to become the 51st state. But 11 peeved Canadians Reuters spoke with said they believed irrevocable damage has been done. Canadians are boycotting U.S. goods and canceling U.S. travel plans. Go for it. Continue your stupid shit. Okay? And have they caved yet? Not entirely. They're in for a freaking surprise, the Canadians. They think that we're gonna take on that big bully America. You just have to punch that bully Trump in the mouth. We'll stand up to him and he'll back off. Really? First of all, Canadians aren't really known for their politeness. You know what they're known for? Their frickin' smugness. I have yet to meet a Canadian that isn't smug. And I mean smug. They're about to get a comeuppance of things, and they're not even prepared for. Our long-standing friend and ally has turned against us, and we really don't know what to do, said Peter Wall, an elbows up rally organizer. Really? I suggest you pick up arms, because if Trump is serious, if we decide to invade Canada, you'll last 15 minutes. You'll last 15 minutes. In some ways, I would hope that Trump would do this. I'm not really hoping for it, but there's times when I look at that, and the Canadians, if Trump decided to do it, you guys are screwed. Because you can't last. Your military is shite. It's crap. You have nothing. Your Air Force is non-existent. It's not supposed to be, but it is. Your armed forces are non-existent. Canada has approximately a tenth of the population of the United States. A little bit more than a tenth. We're around the eighth. An eighth of the population of the United States. And their military, their entire Air Force, can't even meet anything. They have a single frickin' fighter squadron. A single fighter squadron. Not wing, squadron. And you're going to take on the United States? I think I had a total of 48 frickin' aircraft. Fighter aircraft. You're going to take on the United States with 12,000. And your military? Who's going to jump up? You're going to tell me that the Canadian wusses are going to sit up there and go, I will fight America? Not in those cities, they won't. And guess what happens when you in those cities when you go, click, turn the lights off. Turn the power off. Oh, it's wintertime. Oh, it's going to suck for you. Oh, we're going to head to the hills and we'll do a guerrilla warfare. Yeah, okay. I'm sure all those Indians will fight for them. I think the Canadians are war right. Elbows up. You ready to fight America? Okay, fine. When America really turns the screws on. If you want to see what America could do to you instantly, right? There's something called, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there's something called a blockade. Yeah. And if you think you're going to fight the United States, all we have to do is blockade your ports. No food, nothing comes in. How long do you think you're going to survive? Just asking. We don't even have to send in armed forces. We're going to turn off. We're going to turn off electricity to Michigan. Okay, go ahead. You'll find out very quickly that Americans will put in a power plant. YouTuber stabbed to death as she live streamed in Tokyo street. Police in Japan said Friday that they arrested a suspect in a fatal stabbing of a YouTuber while she was live streaming in downtown Tokyo street. Tokyo Metropolitan Police said they arrested Kenji Takano, 42, on the spot on suspicion of attempted murder Tuesday. He has been sent to prosecutors, but has not been charged yet. The victim, Arari Sato, 22, was rushed to a hospital in critical conditions after the attacker stabbed her repeatedly in the upper body, police said, and was later pronounced dead. Witnesses and live stream viewers said they heard screaming for help and the stream suddenly went black. Kyoto News reported that a witness said she saw a man in a black hat and a mask attacking a woman at the scene, and after she fell down, he held a smartphone toward her. The New York Times reported that following the attack, Sato's followers posted messages including, "Where did she go? Someone help." The suspect told police that he got to know Sato through her live streaming and had seen her in person a number of times, and that they had a financial dispute, according to media reports, including the Ayashi newspaper. Kyoto News, citing police, reported that it is believed that he began lending her money around 2022. According to the Kyoto News, Sato attacked while live streaming on an app called Who Watch and Walking Alone near the Takadomama. I'm not going to attempt to butcher that train station name in the Shinjuku ward. I'm not laughing about the incident. Please understand that. I'm laughing at myself for being unable to pronounce these words. Broadcast NHK reported that Takano had lent Sato a large sum of money and she did not pay him back despite a court order to do so. Takano traveled from Oyama City, about 60 miles north of Tokyo, to carry out the attack after Sato announced the live stream and tracked down her location by watching the footage. He told police that he did not intend to kill her. Dude, you didn't intend to kill her, but you stabbed her multiple times? Oh, goodness. Get it together, Japan. And yes, a Florida man story. A Florida man arrested for lap dance heist. He stole lap dances. A man has been arrested for a lap dance heist, police report. According to a criminal complaint, John Elberson, 39, unlawfully obtained the property of another, to wit, lap dances of the value of $160. Florida cops charged that the lap dances were the property of Rain Ladies and Gents, all right, a Clearwater establishment that promises visitors an atmosphere of opulence and grandeur. How about just seedy debauchery? I don't see how any such an establishment can be called opulent and grandeur. Just so he wanted his money back. It must have been quite a sum. Elverson allegedly received several lap dances around 1:30 a.m. Tuesday, but when presented with the tab, he notified the business that he did not have the funds to pay for the given gyration menstruations. He received $160 worth of services. In November, a Pennsylvania man was similarly charged for allegedly stiffing the rain service provider for $40. All right, he was charged with misdemeanor theft, spent 12 hours in jail before a judge released him on his own recognizance, and ordered Apollo Beach residents to stay away from the rain's opulence and exclusivity. Uh, uh, there was an old day where you would just put money in G strings. That's what those places were known for. That's what those places were known for. Alrighty. Back to the next story. Oh, now it's Starbucks' turn. Guess McDonald's wasn't good enough. Starbucks ordered to pay $15 million to a delivery driver burned by hot coffee. A jury in California on Friday ordered Starbucks to pay $50 million in damages to a delivery driver who was severely burned by an improperly secured lid on hot beverages. Michael Garcia was picking up drinks at a drive-thru in Los Angeles when he suffered severe burns, disfigurement, debilitating nerve damages to his genitals when the hot drinks ultimately spilled onto his lap, according to a lawsuit in California Superior Court in 2020. The lawsuit accused Starbucks of breaching its duty of care by failing to secure the lid. Michael Parker, Garcia's lawyer, said his client was picking up three beverages and one of the hot drinks wasn't fully pushed into the container. When the barista handed Garcia the order, a drink fell out of the container and onto Garcia. Garcia's damages include physical pain, mental anguish, loss of enjoyment of life, humiliation, inconvenience, grief, disfigurement, physical impairment, anxiety, and emotional distress. I think that we covered the emotional distress part with the all the other things, according to a recording of the verdict from the courtroom View Network. Starbucks says it plans to appeal the verdict. We sympathize with Mr. Garcia, but we disagreed with the jury's decision that we are at fault for this incident and believe that the damages awarded to be excessive. Ding, 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 ding. The lawsuit is reminiscent of the famous 1994 lawsuit against McDonald's in which a woman spilled hot coffee on her lap and suffered 3-degree burns. The plaintiff in that case was originally awarded nearly $3 million. Hey, this is the kind of stupidity that goes on. This is what's going to happen. Oh, Dylan Mulvaney thinks he's going to overcome. He's going to overcome Beergate. No, he's not. Remember when we were talking about Canada? Those arms up or elbows up, right? You want to know what they're going to do? You want to know how they're going to retaliate? Canada's nuclear weapon in trade war. Ban Pornhub in the U.S. Oh, Canada. Some Canucks are proposing the most drastic measure yet in the trade war with Uncle Sam, blocking U.S. access to Canadian-owned Pornhub. The idea is the brainchild of funny man Pachitsky, all right, who posted a now viral Instagram video suggesting the X-rated offensive, all right, calling it Canada's nuclear weapon. Pornhub is the most visited in the U.S. with more than 3 million views a month. If Canada could ban Pornhub in the States, we win the trade war. Do it. Okay. Canada, do it. Please do it. Oh, yes, do it. Ban Pornhub in the United States. Go right ahead. We know you're not going to do it. We know where you're not. But I would love to see it, to be honest. After all, we have this story. Urgent warning over a common sexual act that may lead to dementia. Brains out. Oh my god. The herpes virus can travel to the brain during oral sex, scientists warn. Right? They discovered that people can contract herpes simplex virus type 1, HSV1, in and around the nose, which provides a dangerously direct corridor to the brain. The infection, in theory, could cause inflammation and lead to complications such as brain damage and dementia. The University of Chicago's professor Deepak Shukla, all right, led the research, told the Daily Mail this mode of transmission could occur in the bedroom. He said any position that makes it possible for someone's nose to come in contact with the HSV1 particles from a person who is actively shedding the virus is at risk. Nearly 4 billion people worldwide carry the HSV1 virus, the main cause of oral herpes. The most common way it's transmitted is from a carrier to someone without herpes is touching an active sore. For someone with oral herpes, occasionally causing blisters around their lips, this means making contact with a person's cold sore or saliva when their body is actively producing or shedding the virus. Okay, folks. Final story. Final story of the day. Right. I know that it's been one of these days. Virginia Zoo responds to a gorilla escape rumors. We don't have those. Well, of course, not anymore. They all escaped. The Virginia Zoo responded to rumors of an escaped gorilla in Norfolk by confirming that not only are all the animals accounted for, but the zoo doesn't even have gorillas. Of course not. They've all escaped. It's a joke, folks. I don't believe that. Social media lit up with reports of a gorilla on the loose following a power outage Tuesday night at the Granby Street area, with several Facebook users claiming to have seen the large primate. The Virginia Zoo put the rumors to rest, joking that the sightings were likely the facility's mascot, Zoo Squatch. We heard talk of an escaped gorilla, but we think it may have been Zoo Squatch spotted on his daily run. But I don't worry, he made it back to the zoo, and our keepers want you to know that all of our animals are safe and accounted for, except for gorillas because we don't have those. The zoo said on Facebook. Officials wrote that any real escape would have been accompanied by a swift statement from the zoo officials. Just a friendly reminder, while these hoaxes can be silly, you can rest assured that the Virginia Zoo has extensive safety measures and protocols in place to keep our animals and community safe. Should there ever be a real animal escape from our facility, A formal statement will be issued by our spokesman to all local media as well as on our Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and website, right, for the safety of our neighbors. In other words, the state police had evidence burned earlier in the day. It's very possible. It's very, very possible. Look, I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen. For one thing, they said that they don't have any gorillas. What if it was an orangutan? Do they have any orangutans? Do they have any large apes or primates in the zoo? All right. The fact that they come back and said that all their animals are secured and they know where they all are, that's good. Unfortunately, with the number of private residents that have been keeping things, it doesn't necessarily fix the total issue because maybe something escaped, but it wasn't from the zoo, unfortunately. But I will say this: if a gorilla escapes, if a gorilla escapes, and I don't expect that they would, but if a gorilla escapes, don't go sightsee. Okay, if you hear about a gorilla escape somewhere, don't go looking for it. All right, because you might just find it. And gorillas are not necessarily docile creatures that just eat bamboo or leaves and things. Okay, just putting it out there. All right, everybody, that's all I've got for right now. Hope that you all have a good day. Thanks for coming. Talk to y'all later. Bye bye, everybody.